Welcome back to the At Matters podcast presented by the Outer Loop Theater Experience. As a reminder, this was a two-part episode. So if you haven't already, you're going to want to go back and listen to episode 2. We split Michael's life story into episodes 2 and 3. So go back and check that out if you haven't already so that you know where we're headed with the rest of this conversation. And we're going to pick things up where we left off, and we're going to find out what happened after Michael left New York and where his search for his purpose took him next. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy episode 3.
So for anyone who knows these two locations and this lifestyle, they're going to find this hilarious. But I thought I decided I needed to leave New York because it was dangerous for me, my health. And I was like, oh, let's go to Miami. That's a much healthier place. And for everyone who knows anything about Miami knows that I went from, I went just so much deeper into the fire, like the deepest you can go, I think. I went to South Beach, and I, it's like I learned nothing in New York because I just re-entered the same scene, which there is 1,000 times worse than it is, well, better and worse, depending on what your point of view is at the time in your life. But yeah, it was bad. Like I just started all over again. I got into the restaurant business and into the nightclub business. And in Miami, it's 24/7 versus New York, where it's at least there's a little break from it every now and then. But in Miami, it feels kind of 24/7, and and I did it for about another 2 or 3 years, and I really spiraled into a place that was very close to death for sure, very close to um, a hole so deep that I'm not almost to the point where I didn't get out of it,
Mm-hmm.
the and again at the time I don't know that you would have gotten me to say this isn't amazing, but
Yeah.
now I look back at it and I get like physically sick to even talking about it right now because it's like I see what it was now, and it was really, really bad. I mean, the amount of the lack of sleep over long periods of time when you're in the club scene in a place like that for years, like what goes on is really dangerous and really bad, especially if you're someone who's not happy and is pretending to be happy and is
Mm.
looking for happiness. It can be a really dangerous path.
Yeah, I think what's kind of funny about that in a darkly funny kind of way is like if there had been Instagram back then, I
Oof.
think that anyone looking at your Instagram, if should it have existed, would have been like, Michael's having a blast. Like, look at that life. So fun. Like, people would have looked at it and bet it's that kind of, you know what I mean? That kind
Yeah.
of like Instagrammy kind of
Yeah.
lifestyle. Like,
Yeah.
here's the picture of the beach. I'm having so much fun. I'm doing whatever I want. And like the experience on the inside of that is what you just described. So I think
Yeah.
it's just always good to keep in mind when you're comparing yourself to other people on Instagram.
Yeah. No one's showing their failures, right, on social media, just their
No one's
successes.
posting their failures. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So you're in Miami. It's not good mentally. Where do you go to get out of that? This is where things take an interesting turn.
Yeah, I see an ad in the paper where there were newspapers back then with ads for jobs, which I know will sound crazy to a lot of younger listeners and viewers, but I saw an ad for a hotel manager for this little resort on an island in Belize, and decided, like everything else in my life, that I'm gonna do that. Like, clearly that's meant for me, so I'm just gonna do it. Like Cooper Union, I'll do that. New York, I'll do that. So I go and I interview for it and I get it. And I move to Belize, little island off the coast of Belize, work for this couple who opened a really like exclusive, high end, like celebrity, wealthy person kind of getaway resort on this little island. Yeah, it was really great. It was great, but it was, what I didn't realize at the time was I left the New York scene and the Miami scene, which was, a lot of that was laced with doing a lot of drugs. And I was, without realizing it, I was just removing. I was like, oh, I'm going to go do this job, and I went to do this job, and partying and like drinking and doing drugs and everything kind of was was just part of how I lived my life for so long. So I didn't think of it as like a thing that you do. It was just life. It wasn't like it was not an activity. It's just life. So I didn't realize that that was going to get subtracted from life going there, and it just did randomly. So it was almost like, I was thinking about it recently. It was almost like a surprise rehab in a sense, kind of, right? Like I just showed up to start working, and I was working, but then there wasn't that part of it anymore. There wasn't the nightlife, and there wasn't the drinking and drugs and everything. So it was just like still doing the similar thing as a job, but it removed all of that. So I think my brain, just without my brain and my body, was probably like detoxing. It was
Hmm.
probably like clearing itself and getting rid of all the years of that, because I started to just feel better, and like I didn't like crave it. I was like happy being on the beach, working at this place, doing what I'm good at and what I like to do, and like that no longer existed, and it just faded away as a thing that was part of it.
So how does one go from many, many years in the hospitality industry and arguably doing quite well in the hospitality
Yeah,
business,
very well.
um, to theater? Where how
So,
does that jump get made?
yeah, I'm not even sure. No, I'm sure
I think
now.
it starts in Belize, which is
It
why I'm
does.
asking here.
Yeah, no, it does. It's just such a funny thing to think about. Like, how does that, what we've heard so far, how does that person wind up being like, who is that?
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, picking up on what I was just talking about, my memory is pretty bad, as you know, about my life. But one of the things that I see very clearly and remember is in being in Belize, turning 30, and sitting at the end of the dock, out in front of the resort with in the morning with my coffee, and like looking out at the water and the boats, and just having this moment of like all those years of talking about how I don't need school, school's for other people, school's, not a thing that everybody needs, and I certainly don't need it. I just had this moment of like, what have I been doing with my life? Like, I think the thought that occurred to me was like, I've been having a good time. My life's been great. I wouldn't change any of it. So to that point, I wouldn't have changed any of it. I'm like doing great. This is awesome. Look where I am. But then I was like, have I done anything that's like contributed to the world in any way?
Mm,
Has anything that I've done contributed to the world? Like, have I done anything that is doing any good for the world at all?
mm,
And I instantly could answer no.
mm,
And the next thought was like, funny enough, like, was like, maybe I should go back to school.
mm,
And yeah, it was just that quick. It was like that realization, maybe I should go back to school. You know what? I'm gonna check into that.
huh,
So I come back to the US. I move up to New York State, upstate New York, where a lot of my family is. And I stay with family for a little bit. And I say, you know what? I'm going to start checking schools out and see what this whole college thing is about. And I wind up going to a state school, checking out a state school, in upstate New York called SUNY Brockport, right outside of Rochester. Something about the campus when I went to check it out just felt cool, and I was like, I like it here, and I applied, and I got in, and I started going to college again at 30 something, 31, something
mm,
like that, and instantly loved it. Like I instantly became like, how did I what it was how could I have thought this wasn't cool? Like it was the best thing ever.
mm,
Like best thing ever. And like, what am I going to study when I started to figure out what am I going to study? And I always loved theater from a young age because my family always went to the theater, and I remember at 5 or 6 years old going to see a production of Fiddler on the Roof and thinking like this is the coolest thing ever. And just went to shows through went to plays throughout my life, and was always aware of the theater. Never had thought about it as a career or a job, but also was always really into reading and writing and storytelling. And so I was like, hey, let's check English, let's do, and me always doing things in extremes. I didn't want to do one major, I wanted to do two, so let's do theater and English. And yeah, so I started theater in English, loved it, you know, just couldn't be at school enough. Would just find extra reasons to spend more time at school than I even needed to. And just really loved it and finished my degree in in 3 years because I already had a little bit of stuff from Cooper Union previously credits. So yeah, finished it. And just loved every second of it and really did everything I could in theater. Did like I performed, I wrote plays for the new play festival, I directed, I did lights and sound and stage managed. I did everything I could because I never wanted to leave the theater. I thought that the theater was like the coolest space in the world, and I never ever wanted to leave. I didn't want to leave school, the campus at all, but then I more specifically probably was rare to see me outside the theater building.
Your initial kind of into theater was, would you say, primarily through playwriting?
I would say primarily through playwriting. I was writing in creative writing classes in English department. I was starting to write plays there, and then one of my professors was like, "Oh, you should check out some of the stuff going on in the theater department too with the playwriting." And there was some crossover there. So then I started, writing plays in both in my English classes, but also in the theater department. And then that wound up shifting me, I'd say, over more into the theater department than the English department, and really writing plays and thinking of myself as a playwright.
And then from there, how did you get, because you had kind of an interesting experience at the Kennedy Center. How
Mm.
did that happen?
Yeah, so between my junior and senior year, an opportunity presented itself. I was writing plays, and thought of myself as a playwright, and probably at the time, knowing me, thought of myself as a really good playwright. Um, and one of my professors, who was connected with the KCACTF festival run through the Kennedy Center, saw this new opportunity. There was this playwriting intensive at the Kennedy Center over the summers that was run by these like couple of like very like big playwrights, and they would have other big playwrights come in, and you do this 2 week intensive workshops with like playwrights students applying to to take this do this intensive, and from all over the country and the world. And she was like, you should apply to this. So I applied to it, got it, and got into it, and then I went. And again, kind of similar to Cooper Union, I didn't quite know what I was getting into. Like, it was way more competitive and serious business than I thought it was going to be. I was like, oh, this will be fun. I'm just going to go and hang out in DC and write some plays with some famous playwrights for a couple weeks. And it was incredibly intense. As people who know about these things know, it was incredibly competitive and very intimidating. But at the same time, it was also crucial. We can draw a direct line from that to where I am now, because I met a lot of people who really inspired me and helped me understand like theater and playwriting from inside the industry kind of perspective. And I also met one of my mentors, my playwriting mentors, who would later help me kind of go through the grad school application process and figure out how to navigate that, and get myself into a program that worked for me. So it was intimidating, but also it was fun, and I learned a lot, and it was a key piece in kind of shifting me toward where I would wind up today.
And so from that, the experience at Brockport and then through the Kennedy Center, is that what made you decide, more school? I want to pursue grad school. Were you addicted to school at that point?
I
Did
was
you kind
addicted
of,
to school. Yeah, I
yeah,
was totally
transfer
addicted to
your
school.
addiction?
I did. I was totally addicted to school. I was like, how do I do more of the school stuff? And and everyone was like, you should go to like do your MFA in dramatic writing and playwriting. So of course, me being me, I was like, all right, what's the best 8 schools for that? I don't know, safe schools. Just give me the top 8 to 10 schools, and I'm going to apply to those. I don't want to get no safe schools, right? So I got the list of the top 8 schools. I spent months, as those of you who know what that process is like, even for one school, 8 is a full-time job. And and I had some help, some professors at undergrad, and my mentor through DC helped me through the process. And I applied to, I think, 8 schools, got into 3, and then narrowed it down to the one that was a good fit for me, which was Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, which is a super small program for playwrights. They took every year they took around usually 4 people total. And then usually you'd lose 1 or 2 over the course of the first year or two. So it would usually drop down to an even smaller class. But we started with, my class was 4 and we dropped down to 3 because we lost 1 the first year. And that's a 2-year program because it's a professional program. They usually don't take anyone right out of undergrad unless you're an older student like I was. So, it moves faster because you're not talking about a standard. There's no breaks. So it's a 2-year professional program, and it was intense to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah. How was your experience there? How did that kind of shape you as an artist?
It was really, really bad, really awful for the most part. It was awful. I don't look at it that way now. Like now I see the value in it, but it was really damaging and hurtful and awful for me for a really long time. And it's not their fault. It was, it's just who I was and who my life shaped me to be to that point, and what I knew and didn't know, and where I was. And it was tough. I thought I went in thinking I was a playwright, and very soon after it was made clear I wasn't, or I perceived that it was being made clear that I wasn't. I didn't quite fit the standard. I mean, I guess similar to Cooper Union, now that I think about it, like everyone else seemed to be kind of on the same page, no pun intended there, in like the playwriting theater world. But I seemed to be on a totally different page than everyone else, and like what I wanted to write about and what I wanted to talk about and the conversations I wanted to have and what I wanted to do with my writing seemed like people looked at me like I was made to feel like, I don't know, fair to say, I was made to feel, I felt very much like, even more so than a Cooper Union, like the outcast, the wacko, that like nobody wanted to be in my plays, nobody wanted to be like associated with the work I was doing. My playwriting teacher used me as, of all of the group, used me as the whipping post, like constantly. I was like even thrown out of a playwriting class once because even the first few pages of a play I wrote were like so considered like out there that like we're not going to even get into the play. We're just stop right now. I was literally thrown out of the room, like get out. And so it was difficult. And after that first year, over the summer of that first year, I thought about not going back. I thought long and hard. I pretty much I felt like I had decided I wasn't going to go back, but I did. I did go back, and the second year wasn't as bad. It was bad still, but it wasn't as bad because you learn that part of that was like, will you come back? Do you have what it takes, and are you tough enough? And I went back, and it was still awful, but I got through it, and yeah, I came out of it, interestingly enough, which is how we can draw a line to where we are now, feeling actually less like a playwright and more like a director and a producer. And that then would lead me to start very soon after the Outer Loop.
So I'm gonna want to circle back to the CMU stuff, but I feel like to get us there, yeah, where did you go from CMU? So you didn't quit the theater. It wasn't damaging enough to make you want to leave. So how did you go from CMU to starting the Outer Loop? What was that journey like?
So I graduate from CMU, and right immediately my undergrad reaches out and says, "Hey, you want to come back and teach here?" Because an alumni who's gone on to CMU and graduated, looks good for them, right? So they invited me back to teach. I could basically, obviously, playwriting. They wanted me to teach, but then I could also pick a few other classes to teach. And I moved back to Rochester, and I started teaching at Brockport. And then that led to a lot of the schools in the area. There's like 4 or 5 state schools in the area, and then everybody knows each other. And I started getting teaching job offers at a lot of the local schools to teach playwriting and directing and acting, and mostly playwriting, but other theater classes as well. And I was really as busy as I could be Like I was teaching at like 2 or 3 schools at a time. I loved it. I was in school again. It was amazing. I was like still in school around that environment. And then that introduced me at a faculty level to other theater artists who were as excited about doing theater. And I started to talk to people about, starting a theater company in Rochester to produce new work. As a playwright, those of us who had just graduated were all talking about how hard it was to produce your own work and get a new play out there. Everyone had seen, you can go anywhere and see the 400th production of Wicked or Chicago or Romeo and Juliet or whatever. But like a new piece is hard, and we were all playwrights, a lot of us. So I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool to start a company that helps people, theater artists, produce their own work? So yeah, I initially, before the outer loop, there's a small piece of like something that happens before the actual outer loop gets founded. But I met a few professors at my undergrad that we thought the three of us would make a good team starting a theater company, and we did. And at the time, that the first iteration was called Flower City Theater because it was Rochester's known as the Flower City, like New York's the Big Apple, Rochester Flower City. So we started a theater company, and it was great. It was awesome. We did cool work, all new work. We did a ton of shows, but after a while, the other two felt like they were living kind of like what you might call maybe more what some people I think would call like a normal life, whatever that means. They were like married with kids and dogs and fences and things and like minivans and stuff, and like I was putting 100% into it all the time because it was just me, doing what I love to do. And they really didn't have that same kind of enthusiasm, energy, or time for it. And that's fair. Like, but it seemed like I wanted to do more with it than they could commit to. So we eventually felt like this was cool, but this isn't going to work out as a long-term thing for all of us. So they dropped off. And then it was made clear to me by like people who know better, like lawyers and board members, that you just start over. Don't try to keep that same company going because it's other people's names were on it. It's just a different thing. Just if you want to do it, let's get rid of that one and start over. So I immediately did. We got rid of the Flower City and immediately started the Outer Loop Theater Experience and started producing new work in Rochester while I was teaching.
I feel like at this point in your life, did you feel like you'd found your purpose, or do you still feel like not quite yet?
Me now answering that question?
At that point in your life.
I mean, again, I, I, it feels to me still thinking back from here that I'm maybe closer, but I still think that person is still not fully clear on what you mean by purpose, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know that my brain yet at that point is thinking in those terms. I do enjoy what I'm doing. I love school. I know I'm in theater. I know like I want to do theater and I want to be around education and theater, but I don't know that I'm thinking about, have I found my purpose? Is this what I'm here to do?
Huh. So then how did you find that? And do you feel like you found it now?
My purpose?
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%.
How did you get from there to here?
So I start the Outer Loop right around the same time you and I meet. Pretty much around roughly the same time, basically the same time. So 15 years ago, you and I initially meet professionally and work together as director and actor first on some projects. For a while, it feels like for a while, and then we eventually start dating and will later become married. But so while the outer loop is in its early years, our relationship is also in its early years. And then you and I are kind of working together a lot and kind of, doing outer loop work, but you're also doing other theater work and acting work. And we're both kind of living our lives, but trying to get the outer loop going. And I think the outer loop goes, it kind of hangs in there for about 5 or 6 years in Rochester. And then you and I decide to go to New York City and bring the outer loop there and produce work in New York, which we do. But we also run into the challenge that a lot of artists, I think, living in places like New York City run into, that if you're not incredibly wealthy, it's hard to survive on just trying to produce your art. You have to get survival jobs. And this is where, for me personally, and I think also a little bit for you, but not as extreme maybe, we start to flirt with the old days of things, of getting back into the restaurant business, and the money's good, so start doing that again. And you and I both do that. Um, and that takes us away from our art, and the outer loop kind of just sits there and doesn't do too much, does a little bit, but it's not really making a difference, and it's not doing anything important because we're spending as much time, if not more, working our survival jobs in the restaurant and bar business to be able to survive. And then that brings us up to like 2016, which is, as everybody knows, the year that, because of the election and everything going on in the US at the time, really starts to not feel great. In the US especially, I start to feel really, really bad. My mental health is in incredible decline. Not really doing much theater, trying to just survive in New York, working a lot of restaurant jobs, exhibiting some of the old behavior, really starting to feel kind of hopeless, really starting to feel, given what's going on in the country at the time, the divisiveness, the anger, the noise, the hate, the disconnection, the lack of empathy, the lack of humanity, just everything, I really felt hopeless. That's the moment where I get this opportunity to go to Tanzania, and changes my entire life. I start to kind of get rid of all the noise, plug into like the earth and nature and people and land, and really, doing theater in a place like Tanzania, and seeing what storytelling and theater can do, to be able to take your art and tell stories through theater that literally, not figuratively, literally change the world, save lives, help your fellow human, can reconnect to our shared humanity, strengthen your empathy, all of the things that make us better human beings and help us help each other, um, was what I found in Tanzania. And it started with that first trip. And then every year that we go back, where we listen to our now friends and family, as we call everyone there, literally our friends and family in our community there, communicate their needs. They're like desperate, extreme, like daily needs. And for all of us to use our art to collaborate and tell stories, and then use the outer loop, right, as a nonprofit theater organization, arts organization, as a vehicle to like create real, substantial, important change, social and otherwise, in the world, both here and in Tanzania and other parts of the world, that for folks that follow our work. I mean, that's why I'm here. That's what I'm here to do. And I've never felt anything more strongly than that is absolutely what I'm here to do. It's what I'm good at. It's what I love to do, to a fault probably, because I never stop working because I love to do it so much. So, yeah, I mean, that person who didn't, not too long ago, didn't even know that really what you'd be asking if in asking, have you found your purpose, or what's your purpose? Not so long after can tell you, I absolutely 100% found it. And when you do, I just don't know if there's words to describe what it feels like. It's incredibly inspiring. And it like, I think I was talking about at some point my hope tank feeling empty.
Mhm.
But like it refills that hope tank up. Like it refills you with hope that, as bad as things are or seem at certain points, and how dark it seems and how awful, like especially right now, I think a lot of people feel where we're headed again is similar to 2016, but potentially worse. Um, that yeah, it's not to say that things aren't going to be hard, and it's going to be challenging, and it's not that it's easy, but there's just gives you a new outlook and perspective on what's possible, because you see what you can do that then helps and matters. Like you see it matter. And when you see it matter, how can you stop doing that? You can't, right? Like we used to say when we started the Humanity Project, like if you hear someone struggle or need, and you can do something about it, how could you possibly walk away from that and not do it? Right, which is why why that one first year of doing the Humanity Project, we thought that was it, that was cool, we did a thing, we're leaving, we'll go back and do our thing, has now turned into what we do 8 years later. It's because we continue to listen and hear people's needs and how we can help, and we know we can. Now we definitely know we can, because we've proven that we can.
Yeah, through our
So
art.
through our art, how can you walk away and not help? You can't. I just don't think you can. And yeah, I mean, that's what I'm here to do.
I'm realizing as I'm looking at the clock, and I'm sure our
Oof.
producer's freaking out. I know we ran a little
Yeah,
long here, so
a
we
little
definitely have
long.
to we definitely have to wrap up. But and there's a lot I think we'll, follow up in subsequent episodes, because there's more I think that informs your journey that I want to dig into later down the path. But for now, since we're running out of time, sort of famously, if I asked anyone from
Oh my
who
goodness.
knew you in the maybe the New York days or even the early days in Florida, like,
Yeah.
hey, where do you think Michael Herman is? Like, what do you think he's doing now? What would they say?
Well, yeah, I mean, a little more context to that question is, yeah, I realized about 10 or 15 years ago, I started bumping into people from my past, and here and there, from when my past, the years you're talking about. And, the first person said a thing, and then maybe the second person a few months later said a thing, and then the third person, fourth person, fifth person a few years later said the same thing, literally word for word the same thing. And after about a dozen people over the course of a few years of reconnecting with folks from my previous life, as I call it, word for word, with no variation, every single person said exactly, I can't believe you're not dead or in jail. And after like the 10th, 15th person, I mean, I'm even feeling a little bit of it right now. Like it hit me, like, I think the first few people, it was kind of like, haha, that's funny, yeah, I know what you mean. But like now, and even after that, however many, that 10th person, what must my life have looked like and been, not just looked like, but what it has been, and what it must have it looked like to everyone who was around me, that's word for word what every single person that I ran into years later said. And so imagine what the conversations were about me outside, like, oh, remember that guy? He's definitely dead or in jail. And people were convinced 100%. Like they couldn't believe they were seeing me. This person was either absolutely dead, 100%. They would have bet their life on it that I was dead or in jail. And then,
Yeah, and now where you are and what you're doing. I
yeah.
guess what would you say to anyone listening who might be in the phase of their life that's the sort of dead or in jail path that might, I don't know, provide some hope?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's a really difficult question to answer. Um, I know it doesn't feel like it at the time, and I don't know that you could have convinced me of this either at the time. But there is actually hope, and everyone does have a purpose, and it is on the other side of that stuff. And I know, I mean, I tell you right now, there's nobody that could have convinced me of that at the time. And I'm sure people tried. I know a few people tried. Um, but it's true. And, I don't consider myself necessarily a role model or anyone to look up to give advice to anybody. But if you're asking me that, then I would say, having gone through it and having felt those things and been really 100% convinced there was no hope and that I had no purpose, that now I'm sitting here, helping run an organization that produces important theater in the United States, helps young artists coming out of school get started in the business, connects communities here and in other countries through their shared humanity, helps people understand how to empathize better, builds through theater and the arts, helps build clinics and hospitals and wells and markets. And I mean, if some moron like me, who was so lost and felt so hopeless and was so seemingly at the time useless to the world, can get to where I'm at I'm no spring chicken, as everybody knows, but in a relatively short amount of time, I think anybody can.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'd offer that the moment you sort of took it was clear, obviously, from your whole story that there were gifts there. You don't get into a school like Cooper Union or CMU, or you don't find yourself in these places if you don't have gifts.
Yeah.
But the moment that you turned your gifts in service to others and
Yeah.
in service to the world is when you felt that sense of purpose, and sort of things started to fall into place and emerge for you.
Absolutely.
So I
Yeah,
think there's something
absolutely.
in that
Yeah.
that's really key to anybody out there who's in the search process.
Absolutely. And just the last point to put on that even is that that's then now what the outer loop is for.
Hmm.
For artists and for folks who are in that spot, right? Our whole point of existence is that we're here for you to help you turn your gifts into, um, you know, pieces of work and life and art and healing
And action.
and action. Not only that then helps you, but helps everyone else. So yeah, do theater, tell
Do
stories.
theater, tell stories. That's a good place to leave it, I think.
Yeah,
Well, for today, much
for
more to
today.
follow up on, obviously. And as a reminder, we're going to
Mm,
release new episodes of the App Matters podcast every Thursday. So please follow us on social media and wherever you get your podcasts. And
yeah.
until next time,
Well,
um,
before that though,
yeah, before that,
I think we also always like to, because you mentioned it actually a second ago, about action, right? We
yeah.
always like to also end with a question or some kind of hey, what can you do, right?
Hmm.
And because this episode seemed to be thematically kind of centered around purpose,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it might be cool and interesting to just think about, that question for yourselves. Like, have you found your purpose? Do you know what your purpose is? Are you like anywhere? Do you feel like you're near it, or do you have like no clue? And could you use some guidance,
Yeah.
finding it?
And if you have thoughts on that and you want to share them with us, we encourage you to. We would love to hear from you. And you can email us at podcast@outerlooptheater.org. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks,
And
everyone.
signing off, this is Rachel and Michael and Melissa.
Yay!
I was trying
She's
to unmute. Didn't happen.
yes, Melissa's there. Cool. And we'll see you all next week.
See you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.